Hi, my name's Kelsey Caldwell. I've taught in two different types of blended classrooms, and today I want to talk to you about some of the organizational systems that I used in those classrooms. The first one I want to talk to you about today is a fully blended environment. This is an environment where every student has access to a device. So here in the back of this classroom, you can see that there are device racks holding all of the devices for every student. There are charging cables available, and everything's set up and very organized. You can build these racks or buy them online. So one of the systems I came up with was a number system so that I didn't lose any devices or any other resources. Every single desk had a specific number, and when students came in, whatever desk they sat in, that was their assigned number for the day. This number system carried over to just about everything we used in the classroom. As we go back and look at those device racks again, you can see that every single iPad slot has a specific number. So, for instance, if a student sat in desk number 15, they would go grab iPad number 15, and so on. That's where they'd pick it up, and that's where they'd put it back. Made it really easy for me to know if there was an iPad missing and whose iPad it was. This number system also carried over to our stylus rack. And as you're looking at that, I just had the shop class make this. It was a really easy solution, and I numbered it all the way through. So this is also coordinating with their desk number. So if they sat in desk 15, they grab iPad 15, they grab stylus 15, and you're gonna see these numbers also carry over to the calculator rack that we used in our classroom. So every calculator, again, you can see has an assigned number. So desk 15, that student's gonna grab calculator 15. And again, I know immediately in those last couple minutes of class what technology pieces are missing and who exactly has them. I also have a cell phone rack in my classroom, and this is again where they just drop their cell phone, so there's no distractions based on their desk number. I had a few other resources for students that I knew would be helpful as well. A lot of students at the beginning really wanted that paper copy. It was a security thing for them, and as the year went on, they really didn't use that very much anymore, but the orange folders there on the right do contain paper copies of the lesson, even though there is a PDF copy on every single device. On the left side there, you can see a stack of graph paper. It was a very specific graph paper that we used a lot in our classroom. And there's a hole punch because binders were definitely something that students started creating and using. Another device that I used quite often in my classroom was an Elmo. It worked great for students to show the work they had been doing, or for me to talk about something specific, so that was definitely a piece of technology that was helpful for me. I also used a piece of software called Reflector. Reflector was absolutely amazing. I think it cost me $12 to $15, and what it did is it projected anything on my iPad screen right up onto my projector. This was really convenient, and I got to show students exactly what they were seeing on their iPads and help instruct them in that way also. I did lots of notes and interaction here. On one of my whiteboards, I also had up their assignments. Even though this is on their LMS portal, I found it really helped students, and it helped me to have this visual right here so we could talk about what was due when and where we should be tracking. Another blended environment that I've taught in is one where you do station rotations. In this classroom, I think the hardest part for me at first was to wrap my head around what this was really going to look like. So once I did that, I created these maps up on a magnetic chalkboard that I created in the classroom so that students would know what they were doing each day. In my bigger classes, I had 3 different groups, and you can see session 1 or day 1. Group 1 and 2 are in the learning environment, and group 3 is blending. And that continues. For my normal size classrooms that weren't absolutely gigantic, I got to just do 2 groups. And again, they had a map as well, and we would just put magnets on the day that we were doing. I also made sure I had the website up that we were using, the number for tech support, and other things that were going to be important for them. So in this classroom, I had a few desktops and a lot of laptops. Honestly, these devices were devices that weren't being used a lot because they were fairly outdated. You couldn't put a lot of software on them, but all I needed for a blended classroom was the internet. So the great part about station rotations is it allowed me to really go resource hunting and figure out how I could use what my school already had to try to help me be a blended teacher. It did take a little bit of effort and work for sure to try to do different things all at once in my classroom, and it took me a while to get used to that. But once I did, and once the students did, it started to flow pretty seamlessly. I also have a calculator rack in this classroom, and again, all of my racks are really just shoe racks that I use for cell phones, calculators. This one I was running out of wall space, so I went ahead and bought one that actually hung to the ceiling, and it spins and rotates. It can hold, I believe, 40 different calculators, and I had other supplies stored in it. You can see I also have a cell phone rack right inside the front door. Students just walk in, drop their cell phones, so they're not having any distractions. Another thing I found really valuable in my fully blended classroom, I had a couple windows that I had written some information on, but in this classroom I found that students were engaging so much on those teaching, working, instruction days when they weren't on a device that I ended up getting a bunch of windows from a local thrift store and having them installed in my classroom. Students also used the windows that were regularly in my classroom. I bought some liquid chalk, and students began engaging in assignments, tasks, and different things in a whole new way. They could all look at each other's stuff really quickly. It made it fun, it made it interesting, and these windows have become a really integral part of my station rotation classroom. It allows students to do multiple things all at once. I have different students doing different things at once, but everybody's still very engaged and interacting in a big way. I also have an area where students can store their binders, and we do use binders a lot. Not every student chooses to do that, but it is something accessible to them if they feel like that would be helpful. I did this in both classrooms, but I wanted to show it to you in this one. As I was working my curriculum, different resources and things like that, I bought these plastic file boxes. They actually fit perfectly in my file cabinet, and I organized each class within a different box. It really helps me when going to district curriculum meetings and other things like that. The boxes are totally removable, and I could just pick them up and go wherever I needed to go with them. Again, on the board here on the left, you can see that I have assignments up for each class. One thing I did notice in station rotation is that it was really helpful when I left my notes up on the board for a couple of days. So I used all the whiteboard space I had. You can see that here is my Algebra 1 whiteboard. Here I have a whiteboard for geometry and also for pre-algebra. My pre-calc class, a lot of times we use those windows, but it was really nice because as students were doing different things and I'm interacting with students during different activities throughout the day, I just had these notes up there readily available, didn't have to recreate anything, and I could just point at things and we could talk about them as they went. I think that was another reason why the windows became so important in this classroom was, for me, I ended up leaving notes up on those whiteboards for a little bit longer than I usually would. So the windows were a really helpful surface in this classroom. And here you can kind of see the desk configuration that I used. I did use this in both classrooms. I really like to use groups of 2 or 3. I thought it was really helpful, and there were obviously lots of times that we did individual type things, but most of the time my classroom set up in groups. Remember that every blended classroom is going to look different, and really you just have to wrap your head around what do you want your classroom to look like. I hope some of these resources have helped you, and I'm really excited to see what you come up with in your classroom as you get creative and decide what you want it to look like when you begin to blend.